You pulled out your phone before you even realized you were bored. It happened in the space of a second, a pause, a gap, and your hand moved on its own. That reflex, the one that fires the moment your brain has nothing to do, is one of the most revealing things about you, not because it shows you're distracted, but because your brain's desperate need to escape boredom might be the engine behind every meaningful thing your species has ever built. What if boredom isn't a flaw? What if it's the most important thing your brain does? Think about the last time you were truly, deeply bored. Not the scrolling kind, the old kind, the staring at a wall, clock watching, nothing to do kind. It probably felt uncomfortable, maybe even unbearable. In 2014, psychologist Timothy Wilson ran a study at the University of Virginia. He put participants in a room with nothing, no phones, no books, no stimulation, and gave them one alternative, a button they could press to give themselves a mild electric shock. 67% of men and 25% of women chose the shock. They chose pain over doing nothing. Your brain, it turns out, will take pain over emptiness. But here's what that experiment doesn't tell you. It doesn't tell you what happens when the boredom wins. When there is no button to press, no escape, no stimulus arriving from the outside world. Because when that happens, when the brain is truly left alone, something extraordinary begins. Neuroscientist Marcus Reichel discovered it by accident. In the late 1990s, Reichel and his team were studying brain activity during focused tasks. They expected the brain to go quiet during rest. It didn't. When participants stopped concentrating and let their minds wander, a network of brain regions lit up with intense activity. Reichel called it the default mode network. It's what your brain does when it appears to be doing nothing, and what it does is everything. The default mode network is where your brain rehearses future conversations. It replays past experiences, looking for patterns you missed. It connects ideas that seem unrelated. It generates hypotheses. It runs simulations. It imagines things that don't exist yet. When your brain enters the state that feels like boredom, it is not powering down. It is shifting gears from processing the world outside to processing everything inside. This is where creativity lives. Think about where your best ideas come from, not from staring at a screen, not from a meeting. The ideas come in the shower, on a long drive, during a run where you forgot to bring your headphones. They come in the exact moments when external stimulation drops away and your mind starts to drift. That drift isn't laziness. That drift is your default mode network doing the most sophisticated work it knows how to do. Psychologist Sandy Mann at the University of Central Lancashire studied this directly. She had participants complete a boring task, copying phone numbers from a directory for 15 minutes, and then gave them a creativity test. The bored participants consistently outperformed those who hadn't been bored first, not slightly, significantly. The boredom had primed something. It had pushed the brain into a generative state that focused attention actively blocks. Your ancestors didn't know any of this, but they lived it. Imagine a human brain 100,000 years ago. There is no agriculture yet, no city, no market, no screen. Your ancestor wakes up. The fire is still going. The food from yesterday is gone. The hunt doesn't begin for hours. What happens? Boredom happens. Long, uninterrupted, inescapable boredom. And something strange happens inside that boredom. The default mode network activates. The brain begins to wander. It begins to wonder. What if we followed the river north? What if we sharpened this rock differently? What if the animals move when the grass goes yellow? These weren't idle thoughts. They were survival simulations. Mental time travel powered entirely by having nothing else to do. Cognitive archaeologist Lambros Malafouris has argued that the explosion of symbolic thinking in early humans, cave paintings, jewelry, ritual burial, didn't come from a sudden genetic leap. It came from minds with enough unstructured time to think recursively, to imagine things that didn't exist, to ask, what if? Boredom, in this view, didn't slow early humans down. It invented imagination. Now look at what you've built to replace it. The average person checks their phone 96 times a day. That's once every 10 minutes of waking life. Social media platforms are engineered by teams of behavioral scientists using real-time feedback loops to ensure your brain never reaches the threshold of boredom. Every pause is pre-filled. Every gap is covered. Every moment of potential emptiness is replaced with something to look at, to react to scroll past. The notifications don't arrive at random. They arrive when your engagement is about to drop. They are specifically timed to arrive at the edge of boredom and pull you back before you fall in. You are being managed. Your boredom is being harvested before it can do its work. This matters for more than just creativity. Psychologist Mary Helen Imordino Yang at the University of Southern California has spent years studying the default mode network's role in moral and emotional development. When the network is active, when the mind wanders freely, people process other people's experiences more deeply. They reflect on their own values. They develop what she calls self-authorship, the ability to construct a coherent sense of who you are and what you believe. Without regular access to this mental state, that process breaks down. You respond faster. You form opinions quicker, but the opinions are shallower. The identity is more fragile. Uninterrupted stimulation doesn't just steal your creativity. It steals your sense of self. And yet the discomfort is real. The pull is real. Boredom feels bad for a reason. Your brain was built to interpret emptiness as a problem to solve. A signal that resources are scarce, that goals are unmet, that action is needed. In an environment where boredom genuinely meant something was wrong, that discomfort was useful. It pushed you to move, to hunt, to build, to connect. The feeling of boredom is not a malfunction. It is an accelerator. The problem is what you pointed at. When early humans felt that restless pressure, they were surrounded by a physical world that needed their attention. The boredom pushed them outward and inward simultaneously, toward action in the world and reflection on what they'd done. Now the boredom pushes toward a rectangle of glass that gives the illusion of stimulation while providing none of the actual output. The restlessness is fed. The default mode network never fires. And the thing that was supposed to happen, the creative insight, the moral reflection, the self-construction, never happens either. You are bored, constantly, at a surface level, and deeply understimulated where it actually counts. What would happen if you let it through? Not the simulated boredom of waiting for a web page to load, not the half-bored state of watching a show you've already half seen. Real boredom, 20 minutes, no phone, no input, nothing to look at but your own thoughts. The research suggests your brain would resist it hard for the first 5 minutes. Then something would shift. The default mode network would activate. The mind would start to drift, to memories, to half-formed ideas, to questions you forgot you had, to things you meant to think about but never got around to. The ancients didn't call this boredom. They called it contemplation, meditation, reflection. Every wisdom tradition in human history has a practice built around deliberately inducing this state, sitting still, doing nothing, letting the mind wander, not because it feels good, because of what comes out the other side. Your brain has not changed since those first cave walls were painted. The same default mode network that helped your ancestor imagine a better hunting route is sitting inside your skull right now, waiting for a gap in the noise. It doesn't need a lot. It needs a few minutes. It needs the phone to be in another room. It needs you to resist the reflex for long enough that the deeper process can begin. The most important things your species ever invented, language, art, religion, science, philosophy, didn't come from more information. They came from minds that had space to think without knowing what they were thinking about yet. You pulled out your phone before you even realized you were bored. But somewhere in that half second before your hand moved, something in you was about to begin.